What's the problem? Well, the problem is that Americans just can't buy the products. Alan Greenspan, so that class of people in the United States that are working class, but they can afford a house and a car and they have a decent income. That's been in decline, and it's been in decline. Every effort has been made to cut back the labor unions that created it, to cut back government spending that created it, to just get the government out of the economy, right? Alan Greenspan was the leader of the Federal Reserve right after Nixon was ousted. When Gerald Ford was elected president, one of the first things he did was appoint Alan Greenspan. And Alan Greenspan brought Ayn Rand, his mentor, the author of The Virtue of Selfishness, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, Atlas Shrugged. He brought her to the White House when he got sworn in at his first government job. So Alan Greenspan, who eventually becomes a leader of the Council on Foreign Relations, also the head of the Federal Reserve, he's in there. And, as things go along, as the standard of living of the USA keeps dropping, as the wages are decreasing, they start to have a problem, right? They start to have a problem. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that Americans just can't buy the products, right? That Americans just don't have the spending power. And we're churning out all kinds of products all over the economy right now, right? I mean, they in the 1990s, the computer revolution, right? I mean, they're churning out all kinds of new computers. There's the dot-com boom where all these internet companies are starting up, and then you have the bust, and they all fall apart at the beginning of the Bush administration. All kinds of jobs are being replaced by machines. All kinds of jobs are being shipped to other countries. I mean, the economy, they just don't need the workers anymore, but they're producing things more efficiently than ever, right? I mean, we're at the point where, they have print on demand services. You push a button and a book comes out, right? No book binderies with thousands and thousands of workers, right? You're at the point where short order cooks. What's a short order cook? It doesn't exist anymore. It's been eliminated. They've replaced short order cooks. They've got these fast food assembly lines where people get paid minimum wage to make a hamburger, almost like it's a car on an assembly line. Boom, 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 and a hamburger comes out, right? All kinds of situations where you would need skilled workers, high-paid workers are being eliminated. Workers don't have the standard of living, but the economy is full of all these products that are being produced more efficiently than ever, and people aren't buying them. So Alan Greenspan comes along and he says, we've got to keep people spending. Look, and especially in the early years of the Bush administration, around the time of 9/11, there was this feeling like, oh my goodness, right? We've got to keep people spending. So Alan Greenspan says, okay, why don't we make the lending of money a lot easier than it used to be? And particularly with housing, right? Americans couldn't afford to buy homes at the same rate they used to, right? That 1950s white picket fence American dream thing, people just can't afford to buy homes like they used to, right? And housing is a big section of the US economy. All the people involved in building the houses, all the people involved in selling the houses, all the banks involved in lending the money to make the buying of the houses happen, right? It's a problem. Americans just don't have the standard of living necessary to keep buying homes the way they once did. And it's a problem. The housing numbers are down. So Alan Greenspan says, okay, why don't we legalize methods of lending people mortgages, lending people money to pay their mortgage, to pay for the home? Why don't we legalize ways of doing that previously had been completely illegal, right? So we'll give them a loan where for the first year they only pay a certain amount, and then after 2-3 years, all of a sudden it triples, right? Or let's lend people the money to buy a house, all kinds of things that in common media they referred to as predatory lending became legal, right? And all kinds of people were getting credit card loans that they couldn't afford to pay back, but the idea was, hey, we're just going to keep people spending. Alan Greenspan was sitting there in the Federal Reserve and telling Congress to help him deregulate because they needed to keep people spending money. Because at the point, the standard of living of the U.S. working class had drastically decreased, and they desperately needed people to keep spending money. Keep spending money, keep spending money, keep buying houses. What? Your income is not at the level that people once had. Well, just here's this mortgage loan we'll give you, you can spend it, right? It was happening over and over all throughout the US economy. Alan Greenspan is deregulating lending and enabling people to keep spending when they couldn't afford it, in the hopes that they can keep selling all these products, right? So a US public whose spending power has been drastically decreased, who just doesn't have the ability to buy back all these products, with their incomes lower, all of a sudden, they're getting the ability to keep buying. But eventually, doesn't last forever. And pretty soon, when people have these loans they can't pay back with the inflatable mortgage payments, where pretty soon all of a sudden the homes start getting foreclosed. And pretty soon they can't afford to keep giving people this credit. And suddenly you have a crash in the US economy. The root of the issue was not the deregulation. The deregulation was done to keep people spending. The root of the issue is not government regulation, right? It's not, people try to blame the Community Investment Act that, they were making banks lend. No, that's not the issue, right? The Community Investment Act and the ban on redlining and not loaning to people in certain neighborhoods, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that the standard of living of people in the United States has decreased in our global, high-tech, low-pay economy. It has decreased. People just couldn't buy back the products that were being so efficiently produced without them with computers. And Alan Greenspan was trying to keep people spending, but they couldn't afford it. That was the problem. It's called overproduction. Under capitalism, the capitalist is constantly driving to make people produce as efficiently as possible. He wants to hire as few people and pay them as little as they possibly can pay, as little as he can get away with, and drive them to produce, right? Just like Jeff Bezos with his network of Amazon sweatshops, where he's driving these people, paying